and I am thoroughly impressed with this machine. Hey Maple, you wanna go for a ride? Come on. There you go. What's up, my man? You ready to go for a ride? If there's anybody from Bighorn watching, I apologize. I promise I won't treat it this way all the time, but we just had to know what it could do. Well, hey there, hobby homesteaders. Welcome back to Peak's Peak. My name's Lucas, and we're sharing our hobbies on 38 acres in eastern Kentucky, and today we got a new side-by-side. Bighorn sent us their 550 full cab, has heat, the whole works, and we couldn't be more excited about it. I got this machine late last night, put it straight in the garage, and got up this morning, brought it straight out to get it dirty. Now, you may disagree with my practices of getting the machine out and just blasting it from the get-go, but that's how I did when I got my new Kubota, and I will tell you, this is not how this machine will be used on a daily basis. It will be used to drive up and down our hill, go to the wood yard, carry the chainsaw, whatever projects we're doing, we'll be driving this around and using it for that. So we didn't get this to drive the motocross track, but we're going to test it out today, and we're just going to see what it's capable of. We want to know whether you can fit this thing through all the trails that we have. We want to know whether you can drive it through a big old mud hole and not get stuck. If you do get stuck, we want to know if the winch will pull it out. All of those fun things. So today, we're just out here blasting this thing just to see what it will do. Now, if you can't tell by the look of my brand new side-by-side covered in mud, we've already been out testing it and trying it out and getting some footage of the things it will do. And I am thoroughly impressed with this machine. I took it through the trails this morning, and I was able to take it through every single trail that I could take the Kubota through, and it was easier. It was a little tighter turning radius, I believe, so I was able to maneuver in and through those trees. I thought this looked like maybe a bigger, wider machine. It must not be, because it fit through all of our trails, so that was my first concern. We got that off the table, so I'm feeling better about that already. The next thing I wanted to know is how this thing handles on the road. It has headlights, tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, and everything you need to get it legal to put it on the road. So I drove it a mile up the road to the covered bridge so I could take some cool pictures. I was able to get this thing up to 49 miles an hour. And that was on like a smooth straight stretch, and that was as fast as I could get it to go. And it took a while to get there. So it's not fast, but the top speed is higher than my Kubota Sidekick. Sidekick would go 42. And we hit 49 in this. Now, this is a 550 engine. In fact, it's not even a 550. I think it's like a 500 cc or 496 or something like that. It's not even a full 550. My Kubota Sidekick is an 850. But I also am not disappointed in the power of this. I was able to run it in high gear up our steep hill, and it was gaining speed, which is something the Kubota doesn't really do. It doesn't have the power to pull more than 16 or 18 miles an hour in high gear up the big hill. And if you have people in there with you, you need to be running low. Now, I'll normally run low up the hill because I think it's easier on the transmission and all of those things. These are just tests, kind of ways that I can compare and know how this is going to perform. So far, so good. Plenty of power to get us up the big hill and 49 miles an hour. Pretty excited about it. Now, I could not resist running this thing off in our big mud hole. We've got a mud hole that we rode the four-wheelers off in a few years ago, and they would just barely get through it without getting stuck. But it was an adventure. And I really thought there was no way this thing was going to go through it. I've never took the Kubota in it because I am certain it would not. but this has not only a locking rear differential, but it has a locking front differential and a winch. So I wasn't afraid to run it off in there. If I get stuck, I could use the winch to pull it out. So let me show you what that looked like. First real test, we are going to run it straight off in a mud hole and find out if we can get it stuck or if we can use the winch to get it out. Think we can do it? I'm gonna put her in diff lock mode and front lock. And it actually shows you right here on the screen the X's that we're locked in. We're ready to roll. Dude, you can't stop this thing. Now, of course, the great thing is that it didn't get stuck, and if it's not getting stuck there, man, you're gonna have to be trying hard to get this thing stuck, because with everything locked in, it will just go. Really impressed with that. The downside is we didn't get to try out our winch because we couldn't get it stuck. But I'm sure we'll figure out a use for that winch eventually. Now guys, I am not going to necessarily go over all of the specs and the features and everything, or as Doug DeMiro would say, the quirks and features of this Bighorn 550, because there are already several great videos out there that cover all of the details. My buddy Hank over at Hank Hamilton's channel, he bought one of these, the same side-by-side as this, only in camouflage. And he did a great job of giving it a rundown, as well as one of my best friends, Brock, over at Rock Hill Farm. Brock was sponsored by Bighorn and got the same side-by-side in camouflage, and Brock did a great job of going over all of the things that are happening inside of this, all the different features that they tout, and it's a great video, so check those out. But for me, what I do best is putting a machine to work and finding out what you can and can't do with it. So far, I found very little that this thing can't do. So I knew that if I brought this to the motocross track, I would really get a good idea for how this thing rides and handles and, you know, slides in the corners and all of those things. And if there's anybody from Bighorn watching, I apologize. I promise I won't treat it this way all the time, but we just had to know what it could do. One thing I noticed right out of the gate is, of course, we have one really tight turn up there, and just like my other side-by-side, it wouldn't make that turn without backing up and repositioning. So it doesn't turn crazy tight, but it's plenty maneuverable. Now, the next thing we did is we've got just a small little tabletop jump. One, because Caden's just learning to ride motocross, and two, I'm old and I don't like hitting the ground anymore, so we keep everything small here. But on a dirt bike, you can get some air off of the little tabletop. I don't think you get any air on this thing as hard as you tried.
You did a little bit.
I don't think so. We'll review the footage and find out. But I mean, I come out of the corner, mashed it and hit it as hard as I could, and it went over it nice and comfortably, and it was smooth, you know, but you don't need to be jumping a machine like this anyway. It's not what it's made for. So next we blasted the big berm that's full of water, and Caden was my cameraman, and Caden got soaked. I wish I'd had a camera on him because it was awesome. But it blasted through the water hole. It was a lot of fun. And then you make the corner into the whoops here. And the whoops, I wouldn't want to just pin it and hit these as hard as you could on a side-by-side ever. But this thing, riding over those and bouncing like it does, was actually extremely smooth. It was a good ride. And I'll tell you the one thing that I love about driving this thing hard around corners in comparison to my other experiences is this bench seat has a little bit of a hump in the middle, and it's made out of a material that has a little bit of friction to it, so your butt doesn't slide around. If I drive my other side-by-side hard into any corners, I literally will slide across the seat and I'll be over here still driving. And it drives me nuts. But on this one, you stay planted. So I like the seat materials. Now, I said I wasn't going to get into the quirks and features, but there's one thing that I want to show here because I was really impressed by this. I filled the bed full of firewood this morning just to see if I could dump it easily with that much weight in it, because without any kind of power assist on the dump, sometimes these beds are really hard to lift up when you have them full of a lot of weight. But I had this full of wood, and you have one lever on here to release the whole bed. And so you don't have to unlatch both sides or anything like that. One lever, pull it up, and I barely had to pull on this, and I dumped my load of firewood right out the tailgate, and it worked just great. So this assist cylinder on here, at least when new, does a really good job of assisting, but it's not too hard to put it back down and latch it. I love the cab and the heat. This morning, I was driving around taking pictures, and it was 38 degrees. I had it out on the road doing 49 miles an hour, doing all kinds of things around the property. Had the engine warmed up really good. And this thing put out enough heat that I had to turn it off. It was warm in here. Now, I've got on a hooded sweatshirt, and I'm not going to say when it gets cold that it's really just going to keep you toasty warm. But I was pleasantly surprised that at 38 degrees, it got warm enough that I had to turn the heat off. Some of the other things I like about this are it's not real noisy on the road when you're up to speed. There's not a ton of wind noise and things like that. It's a comfortable cab, and the sound system is there. I just love being able to listen to music. If you ever noticed, I'm almost always humming if I can't play my music. The infotainment system in here is fantastic. The speaker quality is just okay. It plays music, but there's not much bass. It's, you know, just average speakers that work okay. The readouts on the screens, everything works the way that they should, and there are a lot of features that are just really nice on this machine. I have one major complaint with inside of the cab, and that is it is loud. And if you've watched any of the other videos, they'll all tell you that. This machine is loud. When you're running up to speed, it's so loud that you can't hear your music. I may look into some sound deadening materials or something like that to put under the seat and over the areas where the engine noise and vibrations might be coming through. But the overall experience of driving this thing is not bad, even though it's loud. I like a tactile experience. I like to feel and be engaged in whatever is going on. So it doesn't bother me too much that it's loud, except when I'm trying to film, it's probably going to be something that I will have to adjust the noises in editing in order for it to work well. Now, that being said, that's probably my only complaint. The steering is really tight. The suspension is great. I absolutely love the shifter. I have not heard this thing grind one time. You can fire it up, put it in gear, and there is a positive moment when it engages, and you can feel it. You always know you're in gear, so you don't try to take off when it's between gears or anything like that. All of the electronic solenoids that work, the diff lock, front and rear, all of those work the way that they should. Now, I always make sure I stop. In fact, I was even putting it in neutral just because it's kind of it's just kind of what I feel like you should do. Make sure nothing's engaged when you're trying to lock those things. But they all always locked when they should, and they unlocked when I asked them to. So all of those things worked great. It's got really cool lights and features and things like that I'm really impressed with. So yeah, I mean, almost no complaints about this thing. It is a fantastic machine that we're going to use on our property for years to come. I will be sharing with you how it works. I'll be sharing with you how it performs. If we break things on it, that's, you know, part of the deal. So we'll be sharing some of that as well. But I think it's a well-built machine that you really ought to take a look at. They sell these at Tractor Supplies. I just thought of one more thing that I really like the design on mostly, and that's the emergency brake. It works really well. I've stopped to take pictures on my great big hill, and I would just park it on the hill with the emergency brake set, and it holds really well. All of that works good, and it releases when you press the brake pedal, which is a really cool feature, because I was always, you know, the handbrake on my other side-by-side, sometimes the latch on it, when you would pull it up, it wouldn't grab, and so you would pull it and try to get it to grab, and it wouldn't. But this one, you just push it with your foot and go. The placement of that pedal is a little bit high, so ergonomically it's not perfect, but it works well. So I really like the emergency brake system. So guys, that's probably going to do it for our introduction to the Bighorn 550. I am so excited to have it. If you're interested in more specs and comparisons, I do plan to do a side-by-side comparison between my Kubota Sidekick and this Bighorn 550 over on our Outdoors channel. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to get them out, run them side by side through some tests and kind of get some better ideas of how they compare, and then we'll talk about that. That's on Peak's Peak Outdoors, so if you're not a subscriber, go over there and subscribe so you don't miss that. Hope you enjoyed today's video, getting to see the Bighorn 550. Caden is dying to drive it. He hasn't driven it yet, and so every time I hit pause on the camera, he says, "Can I drive it now? Can I drive it now?"
I'm ready to drive it.
You want to tell everybody anything? No, you just want to drive, don't you? Well, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. Until next time, get outside and enjoy God's creation because it's beautiful out here. Y'all have a good day.